A voice on an answering machine, carrying on a full conversation its owner swears he never had. Two teens in a summer camp are pulled into the sky by lights, and a college student preps for an assignment that suddenly vanishes. Was it the assignment that disappeared though, or did they somehow switch to another reality? These are more mysterious times people claim to visit a parallel world and came back changed. From Reddit user Flamingo comes an unsettling experience with an answering machine. Goes as follows. This happened about 15 years ago. I called my friend up and he wasn't home, so I left a message on his answering machine. I said, "Hey, it's me, kill all extremists. Sorry, I missed you. Call you later. Bye," and then hung up and left the house. I made no other calls. Later that day, he calls me back and he says, "Wow, that was quite a message you left. Who was that girl you were talking to?" I was like, "What are you talking about? I wasn't talking to any girl." Well, as it turns out, the message didn't end after I said bye. I had to go over to his house and listen to this message a few times. After my initial message that I did leave, there was a slight pause, and then it continues on for another 30 to 40 seconds or so, with me talking to some girl. It was my voice, but a conversation I never had with a girl whose voice I did not recognize. You could compare it to the message I know I did leave. The two voices were indistinguishable. Not just the voice, but the talking mannerisms. It was my voice. Also, references to my occupation and activities were the same. Basically, in this conversation, I was talking to this girl about going skiing, but I had to go down to my shop and work on a car first, which totally correlated to me. Then the message just stopped. It was recorded on one of those digital answering machines that records the message to a chip, so there was no tape I could have taken and analyzed, unfortunately. Also, I nor my friend had party lines, so that's not an explanation. It was very freaky. I can't explain it. Back in the summer of 1968, two teenagers working at a summer camp in Vermont, 16-year-old Michael Lapp and 19-year-old Janet Carnell, were just hanging out by the dock, watching the sun set over Lake Champlain. Most of the camp was empty because the kids were away at a swim meet. Pretty peaceful scene, but it didn't last. Michael spotted a weird light in the sky. At first he figured it was just a star, but then it suddenly dropped and started coming toward them. Soon, three smaller lights broke off from the main glow and started zigzagging over the water in ways no plane or helicopter could. The lights got closer, formed a triangle, and then one dove straight into the lake. Michael described the sound that followed like a, quote, 1,000 tuning forks, which is such an oddly specific comparison to make. Then he noticed a transparent dome on the craft, and inside were what he described as two childlike creatures with big heads, long necks, and huge eyes. The craft shot a beam at them, so Michael grabbed Janet and pulled her down as they felt themselves begin floating into the air. The next thing they knew, they were back sitting on the dock. But it was much later. Both were disoriented, and Janet seemed almost in a trance. Years later, Michael started having recurring nightmares, always about being taken. He recalled being inside the ship, seeing Janet examined, looking up through the dome at Earth and the stars. Janet later recalled the event, describing it almost exactly as Michael had, only she hadn't spoken to him in years. Researcher Walter Webb eventually concluded that the two had, quote, no opportunity for collusion, and that they'd experienced a, quote, real external event of unknown origin. Reddit user MissPack01 had a very odd experience with a school assignment. They write, "I'm going to college in British Columbia, Canada, and I'm taking a business class. So first week of February, our teacher talks about an assignment that'll be due March 2nd. It's a 3-page paper with references on something we've learned in the class. That night he posts a little thing about due date and expectation and formatting, blah blah blah. I start the paper early to get it out of the way, but of course, life and work get in the way, so I forget about it for a week. Fast forward to yesterday's class and I start freaking out about the assignment. I go to my folder on the computer and it's not there for some reason. Oh no, maybe I forgot to save. Unlikely, but possibly. So when I get to class, I ask him if he wants it submitted online, because I didn't see a Dropbox, or handed in physically on Monday. Here's where it gets weird. He doesn't have a clue what I'm talking about. Says there never was any assignment. I got him to look on the course site where he posted the outline and nothing was there. I asked a couple classmates and nobody had a clue what I was talking about either. This is so weird. I'm only taking 2 classes as I work full time, so no, I did not get the assignment mixed with another class. In the last month, Did I somehow walk through a door to another universe? Well, I can't tell you for sure, Redditor, but if I switched to a parallel universe that meant everything stayed normal, but I no longer had homework due, I would count that as a win. 6 years ago, Reddit user Peeny Bino shared a pretty unsettling experience. She was driving to work, stopped in a left turn lane when a car pulled up behind her. Out of nowhere, this intense cold fear hit her. It was like she just knew the car was going to crash into them. The car behind stopped gently a few yards back, but the fear didn't go away. Then things got even weirder. She felt this sudden jolt through her body, so strong it felt like the car actually moved with her. Checking the rear mirror, the other car was still there. The light turned green, and just before she took her foot off the brake, an excruciating pain exploded in her neck and head. She also noticed a strong smell and a taste of gasoline. It was overwhelming. She slowly rolled down the window, moved through the intersection, and gave an apologetic wave to the driver behind her. Pino Bino pulled into the office parking lot, trembling. The pain and gasoline smell eventually went away, but she was still shaken for the rest of the day. She even felt afraid to get back into the car at the end of the day. She called her fiancé, who joked, "Maybe you died in a car accident in an alternate universe and you felt it." Pino Bino just laughed that off at the time, but says she hasn't been able to shake that idea since. Years ago, a now deleted Reddit user shared a haunting story in an Ask Reddit thread about feeling a deep connection to someone they met in a dream. He explained that during his last semester at college, he was tackled by a massive football player, 325 pounds compared to his 120. He was unconscious for a little bit, but ended up being okay. He met an amazing woman, and after months of chasing her and dealing with a few jerk boyfriends, they ended up getting married. Soon after, they had a daughter. He had a good job, his wife stayed home to take care of the kid, and when their daughter was 2, they had a son. Life was almost picture perfect, but one day, while sitting on the couch, he noticed something off about a lamp in his room. Its perspective was inverted, like it was 3D, but just wrong. He couldn't look away, staying up all night staring at it. The next morning, he didn't go to work. Over the next few days, he stopped eating and barely left the couch, completely fixated on this lamp. His wife started getting worried, called someone to talk to him, but he knew something was really wrong here. It was like his mind was unraveling. Eventually, he had an epiphany. That lamp wasn't real. Neither was his house, the wife, the kids, or the last 10 years of his life. That's when the lamp grew bigger in his vision, turning everything red while he heard screams and felt intense pain. And he suddenly woke up, lying on the sidewalk, surrounded by strangers. He was still on the ground, just having come back too from being tackled by the football player. In the brief time he'd been unconscious, he'd imagined an entire life. But it felt very real to him, too real. In his own words, "I went through about 3 years of horrid depression. I was grieving the loss of my wife and children, dealing with the knowledge that they never existed. I was scared that I was going insane, as I would cry myself to sleep, hoping I would see her in my dreams. I never have, but sometimes I see my son, usually just a glimpse out of my peripheral vision. He's perpetually 5 years old, and I can never hear what he says." This next story comes from Gunzo, who said he once dreamed he was driving home, listening to old music, when he spotted a badly damaged car on the side of the road. He stops, calls for help, and finds an unconscious young woman with short curly blonde hair inside. Drags her out, gives her first aid, until an ambulance arrives. When he glanced back at the woman though, she was suddenly wide awake and shocked, and that's when he woke up. Well, weeks go by, and his uncle gives him a family photo collage for his birthday. Among the pictures was his mom, young, pregnant at the time. She was also covered in scars. In fact, she looked exactly like the woman from his dream. When he told his dad about this, his dad said, well, a man rescued his mom after a car accident 25 years earlier, and then mysteriously vanished. Redditor this_IUS shared a strange story about his friend Gavin, who he said was incredibly smart, like higher IQ than anyone he knew. This happened when they were teens. One day, the Reddit user made an impromptu stop at Gavin's place. He knocked on the door and was shocked when a middle-aged man answered. It was not Gavin's dad. And things only got stranger. When he asked if Gavin was home, the man said, "I am Gavin." The man looked very confused. After some back and forth, the man was like, "Okay, yeah, he'll be back later." seemed he just wanted to be left alone. Well, later, when the Redditor told Gavin about this, Gavin insisted no one else had been there, and he'd been home the whole time, too. This led to a theory. Had that middle-aged man actually been Gavin, a future version of him that had somehow, briefly, slipped back in time? Yes, there really are people out there who claim to have traveled to the future, and they have some pretty wild stories about what's gonna play out. Alien invasions, the death of all the world's birds, human-robot hybrids replacing regular humans completely, and even human-chimpanzee hybrids coming in 2024. Let's get into it. And we're starting off our list with a traveler who has some pretty bad news for animal lovers out there. John, a self-proclaimed time traveler, claims to have actually come from the year 4000 and traveled back in time with some interesting details about the future. Apparently, in the year 4000, technology will have advanced to such an extent that artificial intelligence dominates most of the world. He describes a world where AI merges with daily human activity, leading to a new era where biological and artificial entities coexist almost seamlessly. Seems like this is going to happen way sooner than the year 4000 though. One of the more specific claims John makes is about the way corporations will evolve in the future. He states that all companies will be owned by a single mega corporation that uses AI to manage its operations. This corporation supposedly designs, builds, and controls robots that perform nearly all types of jobs, pushing humans out of the workforce. According to John, the result is a society where human labor is no longer necessary and robots handle most tasks. John also notes that these advancements in AI and robotics lead to changes in the environment and the social structure of society. He also states that pets like cats and dogs won't be a thing anymore, and that all birds were destroyed in order to prevent them from colliding with flying cars. Aren't there a lot more things we could collide with, like driving normal cars, than like up in the sky? Why don't we destroy everything in our path, already? I don't know. That's an odd one. Next up, we have a man named William Taylor, who has some pretty wild things to say about the future, and interesting side note, he also passed a lie detector test, apparently. Now, I know lie detector tests aren't always foolproof, but not many people who claim to have traveled to the future have gone through any kind of test like that. So if that is true about the test, I don't know, that's kind of interesting. In 2018, a man named William Taylor claimed to have been part of a British intelligence project in which he traveled all the way to the year 8973. And he said that things were, or will be, actually pretty good in the distant future, so good in fact that he didn't even want to leave and come back to this time. Now, the only thing is that humans won't exist anymore, not the way we do currently anyway. Instead, a species of human-robot hybrids will populate the Earth, but no disease or crime will plague it, and these beings experience eternal life. Taylor also revealed some other intriguing information, like how time travel has actually been used by world governments since 1981. The technology was apparently reverse engineered from alien spacecrafts. A TikTok channel called Real TikTok Time Traveler started posting some pretty outlandish videos in 2022, mainly because this anonymous user claimed to be a time traveler. Is a channel the correct term when it comes to TikTok, by the way? Page? Like, do you say just like user? I'm very out of touch. I don't know where I am. Help me. But they've posted tons of videos making all kinds of claims about what the future holds, most of it pretty dark, because that's what people just love gobbling up. They claim to be from the year 2236 and mostly post about events that will be playing out over the next 10 years. Some of their standouts include, in 2025, scientists discovering signs of life on 2 different planets that are proven to be more advanced than humans, and a meteor coming down to Earth in 2034 that will wipe out half of America. So look forward to that. Alaric goes by the handle Radiant Time Traveler on TikTok and has shared some pretty grave warnings about the future. He claims to be from the year 2671, and in his latest video, he lets the fine people of the internet know about some of the notable stuff that's going to go down in the remainder of 2024. Keep May 15th marked down in your calendar, because an alien race is going to show up on Earth and transport 10,000 people to another planet. But aliens coming to Earth isn't going to catch our attention for long though, because May 27th marks the beginning of the next American Civil War, which will then lead to the outbreak of World War III. But don't be too worried about your hands or feet being blown off in the war, because less than a month after the fighting kicks off, a new fruit will be discovered that helps regrow lost limbs. Also in June, the very first human-chimp hybrid will be created, and June 19th also sees a new type of storm form called a mind storm, which causes people to lose their minds and go on violent rampages. As if World War III isn't enough already. Now we have a 28 days later situation on our hands. But the best part of it all, summer, it's really gonna end with a bang. When real-life dragons are discovered in the Rocky Mountains. They fly, they breathe fire, and they even speak English. Yes, specifically English. Sorry to everyone else in the world. You'll just have to watch these dragons fly around while we chat with them.
At our halfway point today, we have the interdimensional ring. A person reported finding a very unique ring that did not belong to them in their home. Despite thorough investigations, they could not trace the ring's origins or how it came into their possession. You just know that somebody in that household was getting accused of cheating in that moment. The mysterious ring appeared to possess unusual characteristics and design unlike any common jewelry. Its style did not match any known era or culture, which only deepened the mystery surrounding it. As the person wore the ring, peculiar incidents began to unfold. Objects in their home seemed to move independently, and time appeared to distort with hours passing in what felt like minutes. On several occasions, the wearer claimed to see fleeting glimpses of otherworldly landscapes, or to hear whispers in an unrecognizable language. These experiences intensified the belief that the ring was not merely an object of unknown provenance, but a conduit to parallel dimensions, offering brief, disorienting peeks into these alternate realities that coexist with our own. Would you want a ring with that kind of power, or would you journey across the land to destroy it in a fiery pit? Next up, we have the flight into the future. In the 1930s, a British pilot claimed to have flown into a cloud bank only to emerge in what seemed to be the future. He described seeing unfamiliar aircraft and an altered landscape, but upon returning to his own time, he reported the incident, but unfortunately there was just no evidence to substantiate his experience. This story has been interpreted by some as a possible encounter with a time slip or a parallel dimension, but to me, it really is just giving Manifest. I don't know if you guys have seen that show, but it's crazy, and I feel like maybe that show was based on what happened here. I don't know. Next up today we have the quantum thought exercise, which is simultaneously my favorite and least favorite on this entire list, because it stresses me out. While not an anecdote of an actual event, the quantum thought experiment is often associated with the idea of quantum immortality and is related to the many worlds interpretation of quantum mechanics. Imagine a situation similar to the Schrodinger's cat experiment, where a physicist uses a potentially lethal mechanism that is triggered or not triggered based on a quantum event, like the decay of a radioactive atom. Okay, I know it sounds confusing. Stay with me, alright? In this thought experiment, every time the mechanism has a chance to be triggered, the universe would split, creating one reality where the physicist survives and another where they do not. However, the physicist, as an observer, would only ever experience the outcomes where they survive, hence the term quantum immortality. They would seemingly jump from one universe to another where they continue living, never experiencing their own death. The idea here is that, from the physicist's perspective, they might feel as though they are transitioning into different parallel universes where they continue to exist. It is a very mind-bending concept that suggests that our consciousness could persist in a multiverse, experiencing only those branches of reality where we survive. It's interesting, scary, unsettling. I don't know, that's just how I feel about this one. We have the alternate phases of Highway 167. There are accounts of people driving on familiar roads only to find themselves in completely unfamiliar landscapes or towns that just should not exist along their route. One particular story involves Highway 167, where drivers reported entering foggy patches and emerging into surroundings that appeared to be from a different time period or just a completely different reality, only to return to their known world upon retracing their route. It's just so creepy. I feel like we've talked about like a few specific scenarios that kind of deal with the same thing before. Just is so unsettling. I don't know, there's just something weird about that. Next up, we have the man who woke up in a different marriage. This story is about a man who claimed to have woken up next to a woman he recognized, but in a life that wasn't his. He had memories of life with another woman, his actual wife, but in this new reality he was married to an old girlfriend. His job was different, and even his car in the driveway was not the one that he remembered. Despite extensive searches, he found no evidence of his former life and began to question his sanity until he suddenly returned to his original world with everything back to normal. This does sound like an absolute nightmare, but it also, like, you know, sometimes people think like, what would have happened if like things went this way or whatever, so maybe it would be kind of cool to get like a glimpse. Okay, and finally today we have the non-existent hotel, back with another strange hotel experience. This one starts off with a businessman traveling in Europe in the 1970s who claims to have stayed at a beautiful old-fashioned hotel. Nothing wrong with that. Upon returning to the city years later, he was unable to find the hotel. In fact, there were actually no records or evidence that it ever even existed. He even checked his old receipts and documents, which all referenced the hotel, yet no one in the city had any memory of such a place. This led him to believe that he might have spent a night in a parallel dimension. Imagine, you went to this mystery hotel and later realized you were staying in room 1408. Could you imagine? Oh, I would think that my whole life was a lie after that.
Is there such a thing as alternate realities? Is it possible to switch into alternate realities by accident? Well, today we're exploring some pretty eerie first-hand accounts, mostly from Reddit, and some of them really do make you scratch your head. Let's get right into it. Our first story comes to us from Reddit user SadBlackCat666, who tells of the time they were introduced to their deceased great aunt. My maternal grandfather's sister passed away from cardiac issues in 2000. I was born in 2003 and was told for years growing up that this is your aunt, we'll just call her Laura here. She died from heart issues. I was able to understand the concept of death, dying from a very young age. So I understood that she passed away and that I would never meet her. Fast forward to 2014 or 15, I'm at a family function and my mom introduces me to my aunt. She explained to me, this is your Aunt Laura. I was shocked and told them both that I thought she died before I was born. She looked exactly like the woman in the pictures I was shown as a kid, so I knew it was her. They were both confused. After a bit of talking, I went back to hanging out with my cousins. However, the whole thing still spooked me for years to come. When I was 18, I asked my mom if she remembered this incident. She had no clue what I was talking about and still has no clue. She just doesn't remember a damn thing about what happened. I'm in my early 20s now and I'm still confused about the whole ordeal. I sometimes wonder if I slipped into a parallel universe where my great aunt was still alive in the mid-2010s. Striped Macaron posted about her incredibly harrowing near-death experience on Reddit. She'd been 25 years old at the time, driving home from work one night in Los Angeles on a curvy section of road on Sunset Boulevard. Suddenly a car spun out of control in front of her, blocking her lane with no time to halt. With another car beside her, options were limited. She instinctively swerved right then left to avoid collision. Then she felt a surreal flashback to a trip she'd taken with her mother to Disney World. She'd only remembered vague parts of the trip, but this particular memory wasn't one of them. This is when she was convinced her life was flashing before her eyes and that she was going to die. She screamed, "No, this isn't fair, not yet," as she swerved all over Sunset Boulevard. But then she just stopped and suddenly found herself alone on the road, as if everything had been wiped clean. She drove back home and didn't see a single car the entire way. Sunset Boulevard on a Saturday night was eerily deserted. She reached home and parked the car, still no one in sight. Once inside, she called a friend asking her to confirm that she really was alive, just to ground herself back into reality. She was convinced she might be in a limbo state after death. She finishes by saying, "There was no way mathematically to escape it. There was nowhere for the car on the right to go. This moment has haunted me my whole life. There have been times when I have questioned my own existence. I've wondered if my life, since this has been a very detailed death trip, and I'm actually lying on Sunset Boulevard. The next story comes from Reddit user Cold Old Duck. I was picking up my mom and driving towards the same intersection I always went through. Lights were green. All of a sudden in my head, I felt and heard a split second of pure dread. Someone running the red and hitting me broadside right in the driver's side door. I could feel the crash, being crushed, the pain, the blackness, and it was instantly gone, just left with the dread and terror. I braked hard and slowed to an almost crawl stop at the intersection despite the green light, and a car came flying through the red at high speed a second or two later. Never knew why or how I knew, but it was terrifying. I felt like a cat who had escaped with one life less. Reddit user MaterialWolf8005 brings us this next story entitled, I Died and Woke Up in a Parallel Universe. I have sleep apnea, and sometimes if I sleep facing up, I will wake up gasping for air and choking on my saliva. Anyway, I was so tired I slept facing up. I remember waking up freaking out and gasping for air. As I looked to the ceiling, my vision started going black from all angles into a single point. Think of how an old TV turns off. After that, I was staring at myself through a mirror I have facing my bed. I remember thinking, oh no, I'm dead, as I looked at myself lying down. Then I saw myself moving as if I was waking up. I woke up. But the craziest part is that as soon as I woke up, I saw myself in the mirror staring at me, but standing up, not laying down. Now this world feels off. I was anxious and depressed, and all of a sudden, I'm fine. I feel like I died in a parallel universe and woke up in this one. It's so weird. I can't explain it, but I feel different. This next story is pretty trippy. It comes from Peyton Lay 0616, who seemed to have watched a monster truck completely vanish right in front of their house. They write, this happened not too long ago. I was standing on my porch watching my kids play in the front yard. Our street has a crossroad intersection at the end, and I could see it from where I was. As I was watching my two kids, I noticed a big black truck, the kind that has floodlights at the top and bars in front of the grill, pulling up to the intersection from the left road. I saw a bald man driving and two other guys in the bed of the truck, and on the sides were two different flags. One looked like a French flag, I believe, and the other I had never seen before. They looked like they were celebrating, and I remember wondering if maybe their team had won a soccer game or something, because it looked like they were being loud. But the thing was, it was absolutely silent, and I could see them whooping and hollering and chanting. Anyway, they turned down my street, coming towards me. I kept my eyes on them because they were intriguing me. I watched them turn down my street, start coming my way. Now, here's the tricky part. My neighbor had a big SUV in their driveway that blocked off my vision from part of the road, and once that truck, those two flags, and three celebrating men reached the part of the road obstructed by my view of the SUV, they never came back out. I even walked down into my yard to see if maybe they'd pulled into the grass of another neighboring house, but nothing. They just vanished behind the neighbor's car. Always awkward running into someone who recognizes you and you just can't remember their name, or worse, can't remember them at all. This story from Open Temperature 6440 kind of takes that to a different level. It goes as follows. This happened back in 2014. I went to Walgreens a few blocks from my house at night to buy a few items. While I was there, this guy down the aisle from me started talking to me like he knew me, but I didn't know him. Never seen him before in my life. He asked me how things are going and asked if I was still working for Joe. Joe was the name of my boss that I worked for a while when I was in college. I told him no, I wasn't still working for Joe because I'd graduated and gotten a full-time job. I was so confused and asked how he knew me. He seemed surprised that I didn't remember him and said that he was Joe's son, which is weird because the Joe I worked for didn't have a son, just two daughters. He could tell I was confused and asked if I was okay, and I replied that I was fine, but I didn't remember him. He was still shocked that I didn't know him. Eventually, the conversation ended, and I went on my way. A few months later, I ran into my old boss, Joe, and I told him I ran into someone that said he was his son, and asked just to make sure he didn't have a son. He said, nope. Not that I know of. I still don't know what to make of that encounter, but it was bizarre to say the least. My theory is that I somehow entered an alternate universe or reality, but I don't know. Maybe I dreamed the whole thing. Who knows?
Number 5, spirit animal. Do you believe in spirit animals? I kind of do. I want to, at least. Ever since I watched Harry Potter, I always wanted a Patronus. Mine would be a frog for sure. It'd be like a little lanky frog. Wouldn't be cool at all. This next one makes me want to believe. Coming from user Less Cold, they say, about 30 years ago, I was a young college student heading back to college after break in an overnight bus. I was about 19, didn't drink or anything, had no history of mental illness, and was reading a book when seamlessly I wasn't in the bus anymore. I was now swimming around a rock formation which I knew was part of my hunting territory and was chasing a fish, which I then caught in my mouth and could feel the bones crushing between my teeth and it wriggling against my whiskers. That's how they posted it, no in between. They're just like, yeah, I was reading a book and all of a sudden I'm a fish. I was totally at ease. I was fast and agile and I could feel the drag of the water, like, you know, the pull of the current, question mark. I like how they included that, mansplaining the current of the water. They're like, I being a fish know this, but do you know about this? I'm like, yeah, we know about currents, man. I'll continue. As I moved effortlessly through it, I knew my body and where I was going and what I was doing, and there was no alarm whatsoever that anything was amiss. You know, I didn't realize that I was really a 19-year-old on a bus. The whole experience couldn't have lasted longer than 30 seconds or so, and then just as seamlessly as I once was there, I was then again back on the bus. I remember sitting there for a second, staring at the page of my book before, you know, having a WTF just happened reaction kicked in, and then I had a bit of a mental freak out. Then a few years later, I saw a documentary about sea otters, and I knew then that that's what I had been for that brief moment in time. I knew it's impossible, but it happened to me, and surely I can't be the only one. I don't know, man. I've never been a sea otter before. Chris, have you been a sea otter? You don't think so? You don't think? You never know. Never say never, though. Has anybody ever heard of something like this, or has it happened to you? Have you been reading a book, and then all of a sudden you're a sea otter eating a fish with whiskers? If so, sound off down below. Sea otters are just smacking the keyboard. They're like, help me switch back. Number 4, switching universes. Coming from Mulks23, this one is so specific that it may very well just be real. Honestly, I'm a little convinced. I've been wanting to share this for some time now. A few months ago, one morning, I believe when I woke up, I did so to a different universe. Similar to ours, but different in some aspects. Before I went to sleep the night before, I kept my Surface tablet on my nightstand, and it was absolutely fine. The next day when I opened it though, I could see a large crack across the top. There was nothing, repeat nothing, that could have caused the crack. I was disappointed, of course, the tablet's new, but I didn't think much of it. However, over the course of the following days, I noticed some things/events are significantly different than how I remember them to be. An actress that I know was married to a gangster, is happily now married to a businessman. A different actress married said gangster, a name that I would have definitely known. I'm from India and I settled in US, and this is a Bollywood actress in question. A series that was being released on Amazon Prime is now on Netflix, question mark. Yeah, that happens all the time. I'm still asking those questions myself. I'm watching Harry Potter on like 3 different platforms, like what's going on? The movie Morbius, I've seen this movie. I thought they must have remade this or something, but nope, it was a new movie. A few other things as well, but those I can attribute to misplaced memories. Not the above though. Also, I definitely did not hit my head or anything which could have caused me to remember things differently. I mean, after all of that, I gotta ask, how is Morbius? It doesn't look that bad, honestly. Hope Spider-Man's in it. Thanks for sharing, Mulks23. Hopefully you're in the right universe. Number 3, cosmic commute. This one has me stumped, folks. I'm not gonna lie. Username IcyFlame2U says, in January, I left my friend's home at almost midnight. I live not even 10 minutes north of her. I remember getting in my car and then boom, I'm pulled over by the police. It's 2:10 a.m. now, and I'm 1 hour north of her, close to crossing state lines. In a city I have never been to, I don't even know how to get out there and what freeways I took, as we are not really close to any freeways. How did I get there, and what happened to a whole extra hour? When I returned home, I was having such anxiety from it all that I was throwing up and everything. We just don't understand what happened. The comments were supportive here. Some suggest to look into epilepsy, but the OP responded right after saying that they did, and luckily that wasn't the case. So, what do you guys think it is? Comment down below. I think definitely a time leap. That's pretty crazy. Number 2, dog treats and universe leaps. Anything involving dogs, I buy into it. I mean, who would lie about dogs for attention, right? Only psychos, I guess. Username mememan42069 says, when I was getting ready to go to my brother's house, I packed some stuff for my dog since he was coming. I put my dog's toys, leash, 2 dog shirts, and treats. I packed them all up, and when I got to my brother's house, I was looking for my dog's treats, and my dog's treats were not there. I vividly remember putting my dog's treats in a bag, and the weird thing was, when I got home, his treats were in the exact spots that I picked it up from, and it didn't fall out of the bag, and somebody didn't put it back because I live alone. So I was thinking maybe I slipped into a parallel universe where I didn't pack my dog treats. I've been weirded out by it for the past year, and I've been trying to come up with a better reason. I mean, that sounds alarming, 100%, but panicking about anything that involves dog treats, it's just hilarious to me. Sorry. Yeah, I hope you figure out your problem, but more importantly, I hope your dog doesn't get stiffed on treats again. And finally, number 1, 2016 again. This one caught my attention, caught it real bad. Posted 5 days ago by user Silence v Silence. They say, the universe is currently shifting, and it has been the past few days. The last time a change took place like this was November 2016-ish. Some of you already know this. I'm sure you felt it in the air over the past week like I have. It feels positive. I hope it is. First comment has tons of upvotes here, and it says, your ears ringing real bad too? Question mark. This is insane because my ears have been ringing a lot in the past month. I mentioned it to Olivia, swear to God.
This one comes from a Redditor named Carla Ray 14, and if the title of the post, I'm convinced my parallel universe self was speaking to my family, doesn't creep you out already, then just listen to this. So about 5 years before she made the post, Carla's parents and 2 sisters were traveling around Europe. She stayed home with her husband and their baby. Well, one night at 3 a.m. her phone starts ringing. It's her dad. She ignores it at first, thinking maybe he forgot about the time difference, but then it rings again and again. When she finally checks her phone, she sees a dozen missed calls and a pile of messages from her family, all saying things like, everything will be okay, we're going to get the next flight home to be with you, stay strong, we love you. Completely freaked out, she answers the next call and demands to know what's going on. Her dad, sounding really shaken, tells her, I've just been on the phone with you for an hour. What do you mean, what's going on? He insists that she called him in tears, saying her husband left her after she told him she was pregnant. Carla's husband was literally asleep beside her though. She says, Dad, what are you talking about? He's right here. He hasn't walked out on me, and I'm definitely not pregnant. Her family swore it was her voice on the line though. Even her sister said she talked with Carla during the call, heard a friend in the background, and got details like Carla canceling her dentist appointment. Something that was actually true, but only her husband knew about. Carla had to send a photo of her and her husband right then and there to prove that nothing happened. To this day, her dad just shakes his head and says, I don't know what to believe. Is it possible someone was just making a prank call? I mean, I guess maybe, but they guessed a lot of specific details if that's the case. Is it also possible that some version of Carla from a parallel universe managed to call her dad in this one? I don't know. What do you guys think? This one comes out of Berkshire County, Massachusetts, back in September 1st of 1969. That night, dozens of people claimed to have seen strange lights in the sky over Sheffield. Some described them as being attached to a disc-shaped craft, and even stranger, a lot of witnesses said they couldn't account for chunks of time after watching it. It wasn't just like, I saw lights and went home. People felt like something really happened to them. One of the most talked about witnesses is Thomas Reed. He was only 9 at the time, riding in a car with his mom, brother, and grandmother. He said they first saw glowing orbs shoot out from the trees along the road. When they got near the Sheffield Bridge, things got even weirder. They came to a stop off the right side of the road. Everything got really calm. It was like being in the middle of a hurricane. There was like a barometric change in pressure. It was just like a dead silence. Then there was an eruption of crickets and frogs, and it got really loud, and that was it, end quote. Next thing they knew, they were back in the car, but 2 hours had passed. His mom and grandmother had even switched seats, and no one could explain how. Reed later said they regained flashes of memory about being inside some massive hangar with curved hallways, and other people were there too. As for where they were, who the hell knows? This next story was shared by a now deleted Reddit user and goes as follows. Okay, I don't really know how to explain this without sounding insane, but I've been thinking about it for years and I still can't make sense of it. Back in 2016, I was driving home from my job around 2 a.m. I live in a small town, so the roads are usually dead quiet at that time. There's one stretch of highway I always take that goes past a gas station, then about a 15-minute straight before I hit my exit. Well, this time though, something was off. I passed the gas station like usual, but when I looked at the digital clock in my car, it said 2:17. I swear it had been 2:04 the last time I checked. Right as I passed the station, that stretch of road normally takes 15 minutes, but somehow it felt like it just skipped. I don't remember zoning out, I don't remember seeing anything weird. It was just like the time jumped forward and I was closer to home than I should have been. The creepier part is the gas station itself. For a couple months after that, whenever I drove by it, the lights were off. The pumps were wrapped in yellow tape and the sign was taken down. When I asked a coworker about it, they told me that gas station has been shut down for years, but I know I stopped there plenty of times, and I definitely remember seeing it open that night. I don't have proof, I know it sounds like bad memory or whatever, but I can't shake the feeling that I've somehow crossed into a place where things aren't exactly the same. On October 11th, 1973, two guys from Mississippi, Calvin Parker and Charles Hickson, went out night fishing in the Pascagoula River. It was supposed to be a quiet evening, but then Parker noticed blue lights hitting the water. At first he figured it was the cops telling them to pack it up, but what came next was nothing close to that. A big light came out of the clouds. Parker later said it was a blinding light. It was hard to tell with the lights so bright, but it looked like it was shaped like a football, about 80 foot. It made a very loud sound. It was just a hissing noise, end quote. Then three strange floating creatures came out of the craft. They didn't have legs, and Parker said they had mitten-shaped claws. One was gray and didn't have a neck. Another looked more feminine. When one of them reached for Parker, instead of panicking, he suddenly felt calm. I think they injected us with something to calm us. I was kind of numb and went along with the program, he said. Both men claimed they were pulled aboard the craft and examined. Hickson remembered. There were no seats, no chain. They just moved me around and I couldn't resist them. I just floated, felt no sensation, no pain. He also described a giant eye-like machine scanning them. He reported everything to the sheriff that night, and deputies secretly recorded them afterward, expecting them to slip up. Instead, they caught the men whispering in fear. Jesus Christ, God have mercy, they had us. They could have done anything to us, Hickson said. For decades, Parker stayed mostly quiet, only writing a book in 2018 after Hickson's death, and that's when other locals came forward saying they saw something strange in the sky that very same night. In 1957, a Brazilian farmer named Antonio Villas-Boas claimed he was abducted by aliens. Working late in his fields to avoid the heat, he said he saw a red star approaching, which turned out to be an egg-shaped craft with a rotating red light. Boas alleged that 5-foot-tall beings in gray overalls and helmets captured him and took him aboard, where he was subjected to blood tests and a strange gas that made him violently ill. He also claimed a female alien engaged with him intimately and indicated she would raise their child in space. 4 hours later, he was released and watched as the craft just flew back up into the sky. A lot of people obviously dismissed his story, but a man named Dr. Olavo Fontes noted Boas had burns, bruising, and nausea. Boas later became a lawyer, but he never shook this incident. He'd often craft models of the UFO he claimed to have seen, and he stuck to his story till his death in 1991. A TikToker claims to be traveling through an empty version of Earth, posting videos of eerily empty tourist spots. A Redditor stepped outside and had an undeniable feeling that everything he was looking at was wrong. And in 1901, two women on vacation claimed they slipped back in time. These are mysterious times people claimed to visit a parallel world and came back changed. A TikToker named Kilmaru started uploading videos over 2 years ago, with his first video captioned, "I am very scared." In it, he's filming from his hotel window, looking out at a city street in broad daylight, and there's no one there. Then he walks outside. Restaurants, supermarkets, even a McDonald's, all stocked like normal, but it's completely silent. Since then, he's posted hundreds of videos from places that are normally crammed with tourists: the Leaning Tower of Pisa, the streets of London, amusement parks, the New York City subway, all empty. He claims that he slipped into another dimension, an eerily empty alternate reality version of Earth. His followers throw him challenges, telling him to visit specific spots to prove he's really alone, but every time, it's just him on camera. One of the craziest updates came when someone told him to go to Berlin airport to try and escape. He says he fell asleep in the lounge, then woke up on a massive ship at sea. For 6 days, he explored it before jumping into a lifeboat and making it back to land. And just like that, he was back to wandering through a perfectly normal-looking world where he's apparently the only person alive. Now, of course, I don't know whether you believe in the alternate reality thing or not, but it is impressive that he's managed to film so many iconic locations with no one else in frame. I don't know if he just happens to find super specific times, maybe there's some editing trickery going on, but I think this is an interesting little art project aside from the mystery. Reddit user 17DemonDickS's shared a creepy story with the heading, I think I stepped into a parallel universe for a moment. They were about 18 or 19 at the time, still living in their childhood home. It was summer, early afternoon, and they were heading out for one of their usual walks to a nearby park. Something they'd done almost every day for years. They slipped on their shoes, opened the front door, and stepped outside, and instantly knew that something was off. Nothing looked different. The ravine next to the house, the tree in the yard, the driveway, the neighbors' homes, everything was exactly where it should be, but everything just felt inexplicably wrong. The Redditor said it was like reality itself had shifted in some subtle but deeply unsettling way. They stood there for a moment trying to shake off the feeling before heading down the driveway. About halfway down, they spotted their neighbor across the street tending to his garden. The neighbor looked up, froze. His face went completely pale like he'd just seen a ghost. The neighbor slowly opened his mouth about to say something with this look of terror on his face, but before the Redditor could respond, they were back inside the house, standing at the front door again, hand on the handle, about to step out. This time though, when they opened the door, the neighborhood felt completely normal again. The neighbor wasn't even outside anymore. Demon D's decided to skip the walk that day. Years later, they still can't explain the feeling. The thing that bothers them the most isn't even the sudden teleportation or the neighbor's terrified expression. It was indescribable wrongness. Like they were looking at a completely different version of their own street. Charlotte Ann Moberly and Eleanor Jourdain were English academics who, in August of 1901, took a trip to the Palace of Versailles in France. After touring the main palace, they decided to walk through the gardens where Marie Antoinette used to hang out. They got lost and missed the turn from the main avenue, ending up on a quiet lane. Moberly noticed a woman shaking a white cloth out of the window, while Jourdain saw an old deserted farmhouse with a plow outside. That's when they started to notice this heavy, oppressive feeling wash over them. Moberly later described it as if, quote, everything suddenly looked unnatural, therefore unpleasant. Even the trees seemed to become flat and lifeless, like wood worked in tapestry, end quote. Then they came across two men who looked like gardeners but wore long coats and three-cornered hats, very old-timey clothing, even for 1901. Close by, a man sat near a garden kiosk, his face covered in smallpox. As they finally crossed the bridge into the gardens, Moberly spotted a woman sketching on the grass. The lady wore a light summer dress and a white hat. Her hair was old-fashioned. Moberly thought she was a tourist at first, but later became convinced that what they'd both seen was Marie Antoinette herself. Neither mentioned what happened for a week, but after comparing notes and researching some of the history of the place, they believed they had somehow stepped back to August 10th of 1792, just weeks before the French monarchy was overthrown. The story blew up when they published it in 1911 under fake names in their book, An Adventure. Years later, they found an old map that showed the bridge they said they crossed, and that bridge wasn't on any newer maps, cause it no longer existed. It hadn't for a long time. To this day, this is still one of the most famous and well-documented time-slip stories in existence. Reddit user Albert Norman 2069 shared a wild story about what he thinks was a brief trip into an alternate timeline. He says it happened on June 28th, 2014. His day started normally, waking up, brushing his teeth, eating breakfast, and getting in the car for work. But when he switched on the radio, things suddenly got strange. Instead of his usual music station, there was a news talk show playing. The host was talking about a recent victory in the Great War, praising troops in the military. At first, Albert figured it was just about the ongoing withdrawal from Afghanistan, but then the host started talking about a victory in Italy and how this win would finally end a second Great Depression. He was kind of confused, but figured it was just a radio play or something, so he just kind of brushed it all off. This wasn't the last he'd heard of this, though. Later during lunch, Albert overheard coworkers chatting about that same victory in Italy and something about preserving unity. They also kept repeating the numbers 33-13. Finally, he was like, all right, what's going on here? So he asked, what the hell they were talking about, and they looked at him all offended and basically told him that his question was disrespectful to the troops. That's when Albert noticed a coworker named Sam was missing. But disturbingly, when he asked about him, nobody seemed to know who Sam was at all. On his way home, Albert took a different route through the city and things just got more unsettling. He noticed there were these banners celebrating the victory, showing Marines landing on a foreign beach. The city also looked way poorer than he remembered. There were abandoned storefronts, some buildings actually looked like they were crumbling. At home he turned on CNN and the anchors were discussing how American forces had defeated Italian logistical targets with minimal civilian casualties, how insurgencies in Greece and Ireland were winding down. At this point, Albert was kind of getting terrified. He had no idea what was going on. Was he losing his mind? Was this a bad dream? Well, he did what anyone would do. He went straight to Wikipedia. That's when he found a detailed page about a war he'd never heard of. It said Europe had collapsed into a civil war with Greece and Ireland occupied by coalition forces facing nationalist insurgencies, that the US was deep in a depression, and the global financial system was in chaos. Albert took screenshots of the pages. After he woke up, those pictures were still on his phone. Yes, he shared them on a Reddit post. This experience led him to wonder about parallel universes, pointing to the many worlds interpretation of quantum mechanics. The idea that every decision creates a split, a different timeline. So Albert thinks somehow, just for a day, he slipped into one of those darker alternate realities. Next on the list we have Darkness Time Traveler. Now, our boy Darkness has a pretty ominous bio on his TikTok channel / page / whatever you call it, reading, "Darkness is coming. The Shadow Network is almost here," from the year 2858. The Shadow Network? Jankies. I'm guessing that's not just a TV station that shows clips of shadows 24/7. In Darkness's latest video, they claim that the solar eclipse that just went down last week was actually a smokescreen for a bunch of alien beings to fly down to Earth on meteors, obscured from our view because of the eclipse. Because apparently we wouldn't be able to see meteors flying down the Earth because it's a little bit darker out. These alien beings are known by many other alien species though as the Planet Enders, or Endids. They spell it two different ways in the video. Gonna guess they wrote the text in haste though to make sure we all got this information in time. People from 2858 can make spelling mistakes too. Anyway, the Planet Endids have invaded a plethora of planets across the galaxy, and aside from their warmongering, violent ways, they've also brought a disease with them to Earth, the same disease that wiped out the alien beings who apparently once lived on Mars. So these invaders have been among us for about a week now at the time of this recording, awaiting the perfect time to strike. Because you guys are kind of watching this in the future, at least compared to me, why don't you let me know down in the comments what's going on. Our journey through time continues with a mysterious man simply known as Edward. In 2018, a man calling himself Edward came out claiming to be a time traveler from the year 5000. He said he'd been part of a top secret government time travel mission in 2004, where he traveled to the year 5000. He gave an interview where he shared a photo of what he said was Los Angeles in the future, and according to him, the city will be submerged underwater due to massive flooding caused by climate change. To substantiate his claim, Edward provided a photograph which he said depicted the future state of LA. In the photo, he described seeing skyscrapers and other buildings submerged in water, with only the tops visible above the waterline. He also stated that in the future, the effects of global warming will cause sea levels to rise significantly, leading to widespread flooding in coastal cities around the world, including Los Angeles, and that the inhabitants of these cities will have to adapt to new living conditions, with the remaining population living on the water's surface. Next, we have the Greek military time travelers. In 2017, an anonymous man claimed that after serving in the Greek military for 6 years, he was invited in 2013 to participate in a top secret time travel project. According to his account, this project saw him travel to the year 3207, a journey that lasted 2 days. From his perspective, about a month after his story came out, another anonymous man from Greece also said he was a student, when in 2008 he was reportedly approached by a professor who offered him the chance to be part of a time travel experiment. He accepted and claimed to have been sent to the year 10,000. The purpose of this experiment was said to be related to gaining knowledge about a future war between humans and artificial intelligence. Again, I think they sent him way too far into the future if it's a war between humans and artificial intelligence. 10,000? That's pretty far up there. Maybe there's something wrong with the machine. And also, I mean, according to some other time travelers we've discussed already, that's a war we won't be winning. They could have just asked them, saved the whole trip. Next up we have Athos Salome, who's now being referred to as the modern day Nostradamus. He's made all these predictions about the future, a lot of them very similar to the type of stuff we've heard of before when it comes to end of the world conspiracies, alien contact coming soon, AI reaching a new level of awareness and taking over, more deadly natural disasters, a big war, soon we'll be able to communicate with the dead through artificial intelligence technology, you know, all your standard stuff. But what I find really genuinely interesting and kind of creepy about this whole thing is that I'm honestly not even sure if this Athos Salome guy is a real person. I've seen plenty of pictures of him, and I've read news articles quoting things he's apparently said. I've seen other people in videos quoting things he said. I'm one of them. We have a whole video on this guy on the channel. Check it out after this. But I haven't seen footage of him actually moving his mouth and talking on video. I've seen like one, but it's like a narrator over top of it and it's like low quality. It could be AI generated. And I mean, just look at him. Doesn't he look like he could be an AI generated image to you? I mean, all these news articles say he makes TikTok videos, but I can't find them. So what the hell is actually going on here? Who is Athos Salome? Is there a real person behind all these predictions, or is this some kind of artificially created thing? And if so, who created it? Next up, we have a man who claimed to have traveled through time with Barack Obama, Andrew Basiago. Basiago claimed he was part of Project Pegasus, a secret US government initiative that he says took place during the 60s and 70s. This project focused on developing technology for teleportation and time travel. He said he was chosen as a participant when he was just a young tyke because of his father's connection to the project. The technologies he mentioned included the chronovisor and teleporters. A chronovisor is said to be a device that allows users to view events from the past and future, while teleporters are said to enable physical travel across time and space instantaneously. But he didn't just go forwards in time, no, he traveled back to 1863, where he witnessed the Gettysburg Address delivered by President Abe Lincoln himself. Basiago was very public with his claims. At one point, he even ran for president, with part of his platform promising to reveal the secrets of time travel and teleportation technology. I mean, how did he not win the presidency? Doesn't everyone want to know all of these secrets? It was a cheap tactic, but I guess in the end, it didn't work anyway. Finally, we have the one and only John Titor. This is probably the most well-known time-traveling claim in the history of the internet. Now, of course, the whole thing is very far-fetched, but what is interesting about these posts are how detailed they are. Whoever this John Titor really is or was, quite the imagination. Or he's a real time traveler, obviously. So it all began in November of 2000 when someone started posting on online forums claiming to be an American military time traveler from the year 2036. They'd later start using the name John Titor in future posts, and according to Titor, he was sent back to 1975 originally to retrieve an IBM 5100 computer in order to read older programming languages in the future. He claims this machine was needed to debug legacy computer programs that existed in his time. And on his way back to 2036, Titor claimed he made a stopover in the year 2000 for personal reasons, and during this time is when he decided to interact with people on internet message boards. He gave detailed explanations about how his time machine and how time travel worked in general. He included diagrams and descriptions of its operation based on theoretical physics concepts. Till this day, it's still a complete mystery as to who this guy was. Was it just some dude having some fun? Was it a social experiment of some kind? We'll probably never know. What I do know though is that his whole story was a bit more interesting than just like, oh, aliens invade in the future. Going back from an old IBM computer? I don't know. Creative.
Quantum fluctuations in everything would be responsible for another universe having slightly different laws of physics than ours.
it's a strange World War II era disappearance that remains unsolved, multiple stories of time slips in the same English location, or a quantum thought experiment that is truly mind-melting. This list is full of the unexplained, the unusual, and the unsettling, so let's dive right in. Starting off this list today, we have the disappearance of the L8 blimp crew. The L8 blimp incident remains one of the most baffling unsolved mysteries from World War II. The blimp was initially on a patrol mission to scout for enemy submarines along the California coast. As it returned, something very unforeseen occurred. Observers on the ground noticed the blimp's erratic behavior before its descent, yet no distress signals were sent from the crew. Upon investigation, all control systems within the blimp were found operational, and personal belongings of the crew were still on board, suggesting a very sudden and unexplained disappearance. What makes this case even more intriguing is that the blimp managed to navigate and land in a densely populated area without causing significant damage or injury, almost as if it were being controlled or guided by unseen hands. The absence of any struggle or attempt to communicate by the crew has fueled speculation about paranormal activities, including theories of abduction or unintentional travel to another dimension. Despite various investigations and inquiries, no conclusive explanation has been provided, leaving the fate of the crew a mystery and a source of speculation about the potential for anomalies or breaches in our understanding of space and time. Next up on our list today, we have the Liverpool time slips. So this is something I didn't know, but apparently there is a phenomenon of time slips in Liverpool, particularly around the area known as Bold Street. These experiences typically involve individuals or groups of people feeling as though they have momentarily stepped back in time, encountering surroundings, people, and objects that appear to be from a different era. In the case of a policeman named Frank, he described seeing cars, fashion, and shop fronts that were all distinctly from the 1960s, a very stark contrast to the 1990s environment that he had come from. Even more intriguingly, upon returning to the present, he could find no logical explanation for his experience, as everything in his surroundings had returned to normal. Such incidents raise questions about the nature of time and reality. Are these time slips just hallucinations, or do they offer a glimpse into a parallel universe or an alternate reality that momentarily overlaps with our own? While definitive scientific explanations remain elusive, these experiences continue to provoke curiosity, suggesting a world that is much more complex and mysterious than our conventional understanding may allow. Next up, we have the mystery of Gadianton Canyon. In 1972, the journey of 4 university women took an eerie turn when they opted for a shortcut through Gadianton Canyon, hoping to shorten their trip back to Southern Utah University from Nevada. As they ventured deep into the canyon, the familiar desert landscape transformed inexplicably into an alien terrain, marked by an unsettling quiet that blanketed the area. The road beneath them changed to gravel, and the surroundings became increasingly unfamiliar and very foreboding. The group encountered structures that defied conventional architecture, featuring angles and materials that seemed out of place and time. Most unsettling were the egg-shaped vehicles with elongated, opaque windows, unlike any cars or machinery known at the time, seemingly parked or abandoned. These elements contributed to a palpable sense of dislocation, and there was an overwhelming sense of dread. Despite the urge to explore or understand their bizarre surroundings, fear and survival instincts prevailed, prompting the girls to get out of there as fast as humanly possible. Miraculously, as they retraced their route, the surreal landscape gave way to the familiar high desert scenery of southern Utah, though no clear boundary marked the transition. Subsequent attempts to locate the strange road and its surroundings ended in vain, as no maps or local accounts could verify the existence of the places and objects they reported seeing. This very strange experience led the women, and those who later heard their story, to speculate that they might have inadvertently crossed into a parallel dimension, a brief glimpse into an alternate reality abruptly encountered and then left behind. Next up today, we have the Vanishing Hotel. A French couple traveling in the 1970s decided to stay at a quaint, seemingly out-of-place hotel in the countryside. The hotel and its staff appeared to belong to an earlier time, and the couple noted peculiarities such as the absence of telephones, or modern amenities. I feel like that's a really big red flag. I don't know. No telephones at a hotel? What is this, Norman Bates? Upon trying to find the hotel again on a subsequent trip, it was nowhere to be found, and no one in the area could recall its existence, suggesting a possible slip into a parallel world.
The following is a story from DSLY4425, who writes about a possible glitch in the Matrix. I remember writing a term paper in college about a specific disease and disease process that still exists to this day, and the treatment at the time, specifically that at the time there was no medication available on the market to treat it, although there was a lot of research being done. Fast forward 15 years, and I was debating with my pharmacist, who was also my boss, how long a medication for said disease was on the market, and we got curious and looked it up. In this dimension, the medication has been on market since the late 90s, which would have been high school for me. I definitely wouldn't have written my paper on the subject or gotten a high score on it, for that matter, if the medication really was on the market in the late 90s, as the paper was written in 2003 at the earliest. And I wrote the paper on that specific disease and process as I was working with patients directly impacted by it at the time, and had taken a good deal of extra training in my field of work, specifically with those patients, so I kinda knew my stuff and where research was heading, which at the time was developing the drugs that are now on the market, but none were out. Following story comes to us from Wolfie is Back in Black, who was in high school when this happened, living in the same neighborhood she lives in now in Mumbai. The area hadn't undergone much development back then, with dense vegetation covering what is now occupied by buildings. The Redditor was very familiar with the area, having spent her teenage years exploring its nooks and crannies with her then boyfriend. One day, they were lost in conversation and wandered towards the end of the road. Without paying attention, they turned right and accidentally walked into the last building on the lane, and what they found was very strange. In total contrast to the well-maintained surroundings, this particular building was dilapidated, like it had been bombed and set on fire. It had an eerie silence about it, devoid of the usual signs of life. No birds, no insects, nothing. There was moss growing in places and chunks of concrete had fallen off. They had never seen the building before and hastily left, joking about the place looking like a haunted apartment. Well, 2 weeks later, she found herself in the same lane with her cousin, and lo and behold, that dystopian-looking building had completely transformed. It was painted in vibrant colors, flowers bloomed in pots, and there was vegetation surrounding it that would have taken months to grow. She approached a guard who was stationed nearby and asked him if the building had been recently renovated, and he looked at her like she was crazy and just said, no. From Reddit user Star884, we have the blue truck. The story goes as follows. My mother and I were on our way to a funeral. We stopped by the corner gas station to grab drinks on the way. I was in the passenger seat, my mom was driving. She turns around, not moving, but the car is in gear, to where I thought she was backing out of the spot. I always look in the mirrors when anyone is reversing, just a natural habit. So thinking she's backing out, I was like, whoa, wait, there's someone coming. I saw a pretty big light blue truck coming very fast behind us. My mom says, cool, I see it, and stops. All of a sudden, there is another car coming pretty fast on the complete opposite side. The freaking blue truck disappeared though, just gone. It had nowhere to go. We were all literally about to crash all three cars. Somehow, it was gone. So my mom and I both saw the big light blue truck coming. We either had something happen or we had a shared delusion. And finally, we have a strange story from Reddit user London Mama 2019 who had a very strange experience in a graveyard. Probably the last place you'd want to have a strange experience in. I had taken my 6-year-old for a walk to the playground. We just moved houses, so didn't know the area well. So I checked my Apple Maps to see if there was a quicker way home, as my little one was starting to complain a bit. The quickest way was through a graveyard. We started walking and the birds were singing. It was quite sunny, perfectly normal. As we walked further though, the atmosphere just changed. It's really hard to explain, but it felt completely flat. No birds, no people, just a really oppressive feeling. We also noticed that some things looked not quite right, like gravestones facing an different directions. I'd never seen this before, and it was bizarre. Some were in rows, some sideways, some facing the opposite direction, and there was a huge pile of dirt against the side of the little church. I didn't want to scare my daughter, so kept chatting. Then she seemed to notice it too and said, "This is horrible. I don't like it here." I checked my map, and it had gone crazy. It was directing us the opposite way and kept changing and moving around. I followed the path round, and as the main street came into view, everything seemed to go back to normal. Birds, people, traffic sounds, even the sun seemed to get brighter. When we got home, we talked about it. I told my husband, my daughter called it the creepy graveyard. The following week we went back to show my husband, but it was like a different place, no weird vibes at all. It was very peaceful but completely normal, and we couldn't find the gravestones facing different ways. I read a book last week about time slips, and the way it felt was described by a few people who had experienced time slips. So now I'm wondering if this could be what happened to us.
Kicking off the list at number 10, Katie rocks. You ever hop in the shower first thing in the morning and it feels like literal paradise? Otherworldly, some would say. Well, a new TikTok trend has me meditating in the shower now, apparently. Here we go. TikTok users left, right, and center are stepping forward, or rather backwards, with their claims on entering parallel universes. Nashville model Katie Rocks recently kicked this off, and she used the social media platform to recall a 2017 trip to Paris that some of her classmates claimed missed the flight, although Katie saw them with her own eyes. I remember walking on that aircraft past two of my friends and sitting like 3 rows behind them. Then the 4 of us took a taxi back to the apartments we were staying in while we were in school, and I distinctly remember this. 2 days later, they're talking about how they weren't 3 rows in front of us, and to this day I have no idea why they remember missing the flight. That's way too close to the plot of Final Destination. Honestly, this creeps me out just reading about it. I can't even begin to unravel this one. No way. The same user, Katie Rocks, posted again a month later, this time saying she's since discovered the ability to shift realities. Showers. Hot showers are the key, apparently. I would have guessed baths, but showers are cool too. We'll take those. Number 9, a familiar face. Username High Life No Miller Lite posted this one a couple months back on Reddit. Great name also, gotta say, that's a really good name. It's since got a lot of attention, let me know what you think. They say, I'm from a very dry, hot state in the US, and I was visiting California on a trip with my wife. While out eating, we both witnessed a person that looked exactly like me. Same typical mid-fade and head dents inherited from my father. Same body type, only chubby rather than my more slim and athletic frame. I saw the side profile from the back as they walked away from view, and it was my exact face. That's so creepy. My wife had a direct view but could not remember directly what my face looked like. But she noted similarities from my body to head and even the way that I walked. I couldn't believe what we saw. Any thoughts? Question mark. I mean, if you didn't mention the head dents and got that specific, this wouldn't have stuck with me like it did. I also love the subtle roast on the other you. You're like, yeah, this guy was just like me, only, you know, not ripped. Otherwise, that's quite creepy. Thanks for sharing. Number 8, quantum leap. So yeah, I went down that rabbit hole I talked about and I discovered another TikTok. How fun, we love these, awesome. This quantum leap was obtained by Marian Valenza. She took to the social media platform to implore others to take the leap. You know, no more manifestation Mondays. The key to these quantum leaps is a hot shower. Yeah, a hot shower, how convenient is that? Thank God it doesn't suck, you know? Thank God it's not a cold ice bath or else no one would know. Valenza explains the first rule here. Number 1 is that you want to give yourself enough time because you don't want to rush this. Obviously, you want to do this with intentionality, she says. Yeah, sorry I'm late, boss. I don't want to rush my hot quantum shower. You know how it is. He's like, oh yeah, classic. Next step is to literally visualize the water cleansing you so that it removes all your limiting beliefs, the negative thoughts that you have, all the things holding you back from stepping into your higher self. Visualize not currently being late for work. And then there you go, you're set. I'm gonna try this tomorrow morning. I'm just gonna have a hot quantum shower and arrive at 10:15. Number 7, Sleep Street. This one comes from username Oopsies. It's like oopsies, but with a bit more oh. Reoccurring dreams have never been so haunting. Forgot it's a dark list. Here we go. Ever since I was a teenager, I've dreamed about an alternate life where I go to university and work in a city that I've never been in. It started around when I was 16 or 17 and now I'm 25. It's super detailed where I go on hikes, I hang out with friends, I bike through neighborhoods and do mundane everyday life things. The university is outside of a major city and I'm always exploring nature, beaches, islands, all that jazz. Last night I was feeling sick and in return had had one of the most vivid dreams I've had in a long time. I met someone and developed a deep relationship that felt incredibly emotional and real. Luckily, I woke up right when I was trying to navigate Google Maps to drive to a park, so I remember the streets that we were on. The street was called Dutch Island Road. I never heard of it in real life, so I decided to look it up. The only thing that popped up was a rural area in Rhode Island. It wasn't exactly the same layout of the roads I remember on the map, but the nature and area looked eerily similar to what I saw while driving. I start looking around the area, clicking different locations, and I start to freak out on how everything looks just like in my dream. Mind you, I've never been to Rhode Island, but the weirdest part is that specific buildings in the Rhode Island University and Warwick area ones, those are the same ones that I saw in my dream all the time. I've always thought that my dreams are a glimpse of living an alternate universe, and I feel like this detail solidifies the potentiality of it being a reality. Thoughts? Too many big words. Those are my thoughts. Potentiality. I'm gonna start using that in the next list. You'll hear that from me in the future for sure. Otherwise, so scary. Hope that goes away. Or doesn't? I don't know. Do you like it? I wouldn't like that. If I dreamt about an alternate life, I'm like, yeah, I actually have 2 jobs. It's exhausting. I never sleep. Number 6, good times, dad times. Coming from Reddit user Apprehensive Humor 55, they say, when I was young, from the ages of around 3 to 10, I was truly convinced I'd already lived a full life. I remember being around 40 years old with a wife and 3 kids, 2 boys and a girl. And then one day I just woke up as a child and my past was all just a big blur with random memories that would come to me here or there. I'm smiling because this is funny, but like it's so scary. This is my biggest fear, I think, in life. It made no sense. My parents said that I used to tell stories about when I was a dad and they would just laugh it off and be like, oh, that's your imagination, obviously. But deep down, I genuinely did have these strange memories of a past life. For instance, when I was 4 years old, my family went to Disney World, and the whole car ride down, I was telling stories about when I was a dad and I went to Disney World. Just a kid in the back seat with milk like, oh yeah, these roads. Still haven't fixed them. The weirdest thing is that when we got to Disney World, I knew that I'd already been there before. I knew where everything in the park was and was essentially showing my family everything. At that time, my family just thought it was weird that I knew where everything was, but at the time in my head, it all made sense. To me, I just knew where all the rides were because of when I was a dad. After a while, I stopped telling these stories of when I was a dad because my siblings would always make fun of me for it. I'm not laughing at you, I'm laughing, this is my worst, I'm laughing at you a little bit, this is crazy. Eventually, I just started going on with my life and haven't thought about much of it since, although I wish I did because the memories back then were much more vivid and real than how they are now. He's gonna be so confusing 30 years to his kids. He's like, when I was a dad for the first time, Disney was way less busy. Kids are like, first time? What other family? What are you talking about? Why is mom crying? That's so scary. I buy into this. I don't know, the afterlife, maybe that past dad died and then you were reborn. I don't know, that's scary. I don't want to think of it.